what's the interest right now more and more with so many of the people such as myself and others around African-centered education now? And do you think that it's different now than what that movement was in the 70s and 80s?
I think it's in decline now. Um, there were some things that occurred within the what I'll call the formal African-centered education movement. That movement evolves out of community control of schools movements in the late 60s. And that was an effort by African Americans and Hispanics to gain control of the schools, the public schools in our communities. And then after protesting, negotiating, compromising, and trying to approach or build or gain control of the schools in our community so we could control our children, the brothers and sisters that were at the forefront of that movement got frustrated with being played by the people on the other side, and they just said, to hell with this movement. We're going to just build our schools, our own schools. So one of the first was Uhuru Sasa, which was founded in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, by G2 Usi. And there were other schools popping up around the same time. And the idea was to create an alternative type of education. There was major philosophical or ideological debates. One of the main debates was, as we seek to establish an alternative type education for our children, should we create schools outside of the public school systems? Or because most African American children or children of African descent are in the public schools, should we try to reform or fight within the system to create schools that can deliver the type of education we think that African children need? So, and it's interesting because this debate, ultimately, you have groups of teachers and parents that separate from public education and establish independent schools or private schools. So
Like Mommy Imani.
the earliest iteration of this during the Black Power era, or kind of on the end of the Black Power era around the early 70s, it's called the Independent Black School Movement. The Independent Black School Movement morphs into the African-centered education movement. So it wouldn't have been called that at its inception. Mommy Imani, as part of a collective of families called Umoja Abuganda, which included Mommy Imani, her sister Malkia Brantul. Do you remember Toby that went to the Shule?
No.
Okay, I think he may have come after you, but his grandmother, I can't remember her name, Mama Anamoy Hill, which was Mama Akanke's mother. I'm sure you remember Mama Anamoy.
Remember her.
Mama Razia Curtis. Do you remember Mama Kabibi?
Yes.
Her mother. And all of these, there were some other people whose names don't come to me at this time, but this group of families came together and said, we're going to create a school. And they tried it on a kind of trial basis. And once they got it going, I think they did it for maybe a semester. They just continued to do it. There was no such thing as a charter. So they weren't concerned. I shouldn't say they weren't concerned about the money, but the money was not a issue on whether or not the school could exist. Now that's around 72. I think they may have had an early version prior to 72. And Insuroma is founded in a similar fashion. Insuroma is founded in 1989 by a group of families that came together and wanted culturally relevant and culturally focused education to educate their children. So Malik Yakini, Mama Kianga, who I'm sure you know, she's referred to as Mama Sedekanya, I think now. She works at Timbuktu, which is now Barack Obama Academy. You may know Sawatu. She was younger than you, but she's an activist, and she was in the news probably 3 or 4 years ago for having discharged a firearm or something. Her mother, Mama Motisala is her name. Baba Kalinde, Mama Jindai,
Mama Ngia.
I'm not sure if Mama Ngia was in that. at this point.
Okay.
But also Mama Nkange Zola, who's the ancestor now. So they had children at the Shule, and there was a conflict emerged, so they pulled out of Aisha Shule. And collectively, it started with Malik homeschooling his children, and because this group of people had decided they wanted something different for their children, and there were some differences between this group of people and the Shule, they were looking for an alternative place to educate their children. Because Malik was a public school teacher, and he was homeschooling his children, and the other people in the group asked them if he would homeschool their children, or if they could bring their children to him as well.